working out. So.
We're about to find out.
All right.
Because I just hit the live button.
All right.
And I shouldn't have done that.
No, that's okay. I'll go ahead and open.
see if yours is streaming. I took my phone away purposefully so that I wouldn't look at my phone.
Waiting for Mike Martin.
Give it a second to catch up.
It looks like this is Brian Stevens' live stream.
Oh, what's it doing?
It's coming up on your channel.
Okay.
Which is cool.
I want to come up to both of them though. Let's see. It's coming up on mine.
So definitely seeing it on yours.
We think.
Allegedly.
You see anything? Oh, you know what? That's because Brian's a dummy. There we go. Refresh that. I forgot when I have to do that. There we go.
All right, should I try refreshing?
I'm wondering if I needed to key in that specifically, since you set up a page for it.
Maybe so.
Might have.
Maybe so.
Go to your regular profile. This is if you happen to be watching, and I'm supposed to be able to see comments. Load comments. I can see comments from Facebook.
Aha! There you are.
Oh, there. Yeah.
Here.
All right. So we're there on mine, and I bet if you go to your regular YouTube profile. Do you see it going live anywhere? On your, go to your channel. I got a little bit of a ground hum I need to fix.
It does say, no, that's an older one. That's live now, 2 people streaming.
Hit it and see what it is.
I think it's just coming up. It's the right stream, but it's coming up under the wrong name, so I'll have to edit that.
Okay.
Yeah. Hello.
Okay. Well, you're live, though.
I am live.
Okay. As long as they go to your YouTube channel, then they can get the live stream.
Right.
Beautiful. Awesome.
I don't know if I can edit the title of this so people are seeing this as they go by.
That probably means I need to check my focus. Yeah, cool. All right. So, and I know it should be going to my Facebook, my regular Facebook as well. Since I did make an event, though, it won't let me see that. So I'll let you do the chat stuff. I'll just apologize for my dogs now.
All right.
And so if you're watching and you're on any of my profiles, I can't see diddly. So we're just going to run with it like it is.
So, hey, guys, it's me. It's Mike. And we're doing this live chat. I'm here at Brian Stevens' Secrets Cove Studios. It's a secret.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you how I got here, but there was a river involved. There wasn't quite a raft and, people swimming against the tide with sharks and all that stuff, but it was a trek and a journey. So anyway, little bit of a technical thing here. I'll change the title when we finish up with this, when I just repost this up on YouTube after the live chat is over. But essentially, this video is probably going to look and sound a lot nicer than anything else I ever do. So I apologize for future stuff.
I'm going to be the technical guy now.
There, see,
look at that. See, now you're going to sound even better.
Now I got an engineer working for me, which is great.
Yeah, and you put your mouth somewhere in the general vicinity, and miraculously it just sounds amazing.
See me play guitar. No, Mike's just getting pictures way.
But yeah, for people that are Mike's subscribers, welcome to, I call it the room above my garage. It's the second studio at Secret Cove Studios, which is basically a little television studio in what is essentially the room above my garage.
It's nice. You walk in and you're like, wow, it's incredible what you could do with a small amount of space.
And that's part of what we're going to talk about today.
Yes.
Is technology and all the things that you can possibly do with technology, specifically for recording. But while we're doing this,
we may as well talk about this stuff too, because
while we're on YouTube.
So here's the idea for anybody who's been subscribing and waiting for me to put up new content. I was explaining this to Brian as we were getting set up. I have been probably improperly waiting for the content gods to tap me on the head and let me know, this is good, you should put this up on the internet.
Yep.
So I've not been putting up stuff, and then as I'm realizing I have real questions of real things that I need to do for all of my business that hey, dummy, that's content. So you might just we could have had a phone conversation.
Yeah.
But we need an excuse to be in the same room anyway because we've been friends for like 20 years.
Yeah.
So like it's always good to see each other.
And you live way further away from Atlanta than I do.
Yes.
People think I'm 29 miles from downtown.
I'm 65.
You're 4 time zones.
Yeah. Like I said, there's a river. There's no sharks, but there is a river. So in any case, I asked Brian if he would be interested in doing this cross-pollination sort of internet chat, and this will probably be the first of many because I think this is a really cool thing. And like I'm always picking Brian's brain anyway because I'm that friend who's a little slow at adopting things, and like he's probably told me the same advice 16 times now, and
It's okay.
I'm just starting to get it, but I'm smart enough to keep asking, and I think that's the important. There are no bad questions,
Right.
like. I think that's just the thing. Just keep asking questions.
Yeah, you just keep asking questions.
So here's where I am,
Okay.
present tense, exactly with my stuff.
Okay.
I stopped working on my record a few years ago, and my home studio was left in a state, which
Sure.
basically was a late 2012 Mac Mini Fusion drive.
Okay.
And for those who don't know, a Fusion drive was one of the first like hybrid drives. It's like part solid state, part regular hard drive. And it was supposed to be smart enough, and I think it's fairly accurate with this. The more I used Pro Tools and whatever software you use the most, it would put that over onto the solid state drive, so it would boot up faster. And then anything you weren't using, it would leave it over on the regular drive side.
Okay.
And I think that's fairly true. And that computer really didn't go online a whole lot. It really just did Pro Tools for me until my iMac, may it rest in peace, finally gave up the ghost. I have resurrected it, but I haven't done anything with it because that's a 2005 iMac.
Wow.
And like, it's not even really qualified to check the mail.
You can't even answer the phone with that thing.
No. So like, it's literally just sitting on a counter. Like, I don't know what to do with it. Like, I feel like I should be able to repurpose it somehow.
It's a really big calculator.
It's one of those Casio watches. It's like a Casio backpack watch. So in any case, that's kind of where that guy was living. And my Pro Tools situation is Pro Tools. I wrote all of this stuff down because I never remember
Go through
this
it. Go through it.
All right.
Hit me.
So here are the specs of stuff.
Okay.
So what I'm thinking is these are the assets that I have. These are real questions of I know things need to be updated from time to time, but it also gets you down a rabbit hole of you could mistakenly update your OS and then all of a sudden you have to update everything.
Right.
Or if you update one other thing in your DAW, you have to update everything with it. So if you have limited funds, it's pretty smart to ask these questions before you just start going, hey, I really want that.
No.
Because the going backwards can be problematic. So Mac Mini is a late 2012 Fusion drive. It's a terabyte drive. 2.6 gigahertz Intel i7, 16 gig of RAM. I think
The i7, is that a dual core? Is it a quad core?
I think that's a dual core.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, it should probably be the same as this laptop, right, Joe?
Yeah. Do your about this Mac and see what that is. I'm thinking it's quad core, but I might be wrong. Just Core i7 is all it says?
Yeah, that's all it says.
Okay. I mean, not that it super matters because I'm going to give you some other things that are much more important to think about.
So,
But when it comes to processing plugins, that's really where that makes a big difference if you got a dual core or you've got a quad core.
yeah.
So.
And also, the Pro Tools version I have still on that machine is 10.3.247. Yeah. And the operating system is still 10.8.5.
Woo-hoo!
So it's old, but
Yeah.
when I start looking in terms of hardware, my main interface for a long time had been a trusty Digi 002.
I had
rack.
one. I had one.
It's great. It still sounds great. It still works great. But in the updating lineage of things, the next operating system update made that no longer usable. You were forced to buy, and this is still proprietary interface when Pro Tools was doing all of that stuff. I would have had to have bought a new interface. Not that there was anything wrong with buying a new interface, but if you don't have funds for said new interface,
You had to have money.
monies.
Something.
Yeah, and if you don't play guitar for a living, you probably have money. Not that I don't make money, but I just make less of it than a lot of people. So in it, like I can't even afford razors anymore.
Apparently. See that I should have picked that one up. That was my bad, man. I dropped the ball on it. I should have picked it up. I should have been faster.
So, along the way over the last few years, speaking of the money part of this, and it does kind of tie into like the reality of being an artist and trying to birth new work. The new work that I was working on is very close to the bone for me. Yeah. So it's very emotional, programmatic.
So it's going to be a good record, is what you're saying.
I'm hoping. Like I'm really hoping that this endeavor is a bit. I'm trying to err much closer to very emotional music rather than a shred record. And I think everybody who got to a 5, if you were looking for a shred record, I think a lot of people were disappointed that it wasn't a shred record. But
great record, though. It's great.
And we did all the drums for the record here. And Brian also mixed and mastered O Come, O Come Emmanuel, my Christmas tune.
Yeah.
So, like, long working relationship on all of that stuff. Well, this will even...
Almost as long as that beard, dude.
Almost.
I picked it up. I got it. I picked it up.
It's in the Hall of Fame. You can give it the Al Bundy. So... that kind of picks up on this record anyway, is sort of more to the point of that, and also more to the point of where am I going artistically with a lot of that stuff. It's trying to steer a ship that probably doesn't even need to be steered or stored or whatever the proper past tense of that would be, because English is not my thing. Because I'm not necessarily worried about a particular audience like I was when I put out 2 of 5.
Right.
I had been planning to do 2 of 5 before I had joined Fozzy. Mm-hmm. And my performance trajectory before Fozzy was different. Okay. So being in Fozzy, which is very hard rock, heavy metal, I made a much more aggressive sounding record and left a lot of music that would have been on that record off of there because I didn't think kids would have liked bossa novas and other things. Like, kids need bossa novas.
High water pants are back.
Yeah.
All sorts of things are back. Bow ties are back.
Beards are back.
Apparently so.
Man buns are back.
So bossa novas could be back. You could bring them back.
So I made decisions because of the opportunity of the exposure that I had being in Chris Jericho's band, specifically trying to think of, and you should do this anyway, you want to make great art, but you also have to think about how you're going to sell this stuff when you've got 1,000 boxed up CDs on your living room
There's an
table.
intersection between art and commerce that you have to find if you're going to have any real tangible success. And that's hard to do.
Yeah.
Because, most people seem to think that you're going to sacrifice either the art or the commerce. And there are plenty of people now, because of the world we live in, because of technology, because of the internet, because we can go live like this, almost broadcast quality to the entire world.
It may not be broadcast quality, but it is restaurant quality. I got that from Charlie Sheets, so you're welcome.
So it's one of those where there are plenty of examples of people that they've got that intersection just right between art and commerce. There's a sweet spot. You just have to work to find it.
Yeah. John Mayer found it.
I'd like to think so.
Yeah,
not everybody thinks so, but I like to think so.
I think so. I think Joe Bonamassa found it.
Oh, in spades, dude.
Yeah. There's a thing of just, if you can have faith in what you do, I think the culture will grow around you. And I think that's a big piece of what a lot of up and coming artists don't necessarily think about, because they're so busy looking at the thing that they just want to make that they don't necessarily take into account that it's not just branding you. If you're growing a culture of people who are interested in what you do and are going to follow you and buy your T-shirts and all of that stuff, your culture becomes their culture. So there is a bit of a responsibility in what you're putting out into the world, so that people will want to adopt it. Yeah. And hopefully it's a beautiful thing, whatever it is. If it's heavy metal, it's heavy metal. I like this. We were metal kids, leather-studded wristbands and all of that stuff. Like,
mine had crosses on it. It was a Jesus wristband.
Yeah.
But okay.
Yeah.
I feel you.
Like all of that stuff.
A little sheltered.
So anyway, in all of the thinking about that moving forward with the next album idea, I had several concerns coming up. One was, as I got into it, and if you're following me on my channel, you know this stuff already, but it's 2 hours of programmatic music. It's meant to be digested like symphonically.
Right.
Of course, there's individual pieces of music, But I had this grand idea for this double gatefold, four-sided vinyl. Like I wanted there to be a whole
You want people to
presentation
sit
all
and
of
listen
this.
to this music.
Yes, kind of like you would sit and listen to The Wall. I wanted it to be something in an age where probably some really good advice for an artist is, hey, don't worry about putting out a whole record. Get a good single out there or get a good EP out there.
I hear it every day.
Like my very good friend and brother, Angel Vivaldi, who's an incredible guitar player, he's put out a series of EPs. I don't think he's done one full-length album yet. And his career trajectory has gone through the roof. Now, he's special because he's incredibly gifted. He's incredibly talented. He has a very engaging personality, and he found his culture.
Sure.
He figured out how to do all of that stuff. And as I was thinking about doing that, and I'm not saying I wouldn't do a single, but I kind of had started thinking about, well, I could do a serial singles. So like maybe a single a month for 20 months, because it is 20 pieces of music. And you could dole it out and that people would catch up along the way. And that would give me a sort of a long sum game of marketing to work on that. And then at the end of that, hopefully have the capital to do a giant vinyl pressing of the whole thing. A lot of questions and exactly how to do that stuff, but the financial part as the producer of all of that came into question. So I stopped working because I didn't want to rush through stuff just to get it done, to get it out, because I was excited about some work. I needed to have a better game for that. So I stopped doing that. I also stopped taking a lot of $50 and $75 gigs around town.
Good on you, man.
Because a lot of those gigs, we take them because of fear.
Right.
Because if you're an independent contractor like I am, unless you have a big fish that's hiring you, like Fozzy or Stuck Mojo or whatever else that I was doing, if you don't work, you don't eat.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of longevity in that. And even still, being in a band like Fozzy or Stuck Mojo, they're the artist, and I'm the hired gun. So I don't have mailbox money coming at the end of records being sold. You want records to sell well so that they get better concert bookings, so they can pay you better on tours. You can be out for longer and so on and so forth. When it's all you got to pay for every bit of that. If you're buying onto a tour, I am, I am the tour expenses. I am, name it. It's all of it. So I stopped doing that, and I decided to do something, partly with depression about all of this stuff too. I decided to go get a job that I didn't care so much about, which is great advice to anybody. If you're kind of losing your mind on something, just go do something. It doesn't have to be the greatest thing on your resume.
Anything.
Just go do it. I happen to have a little bit of a retail background too, and rather than go back to working for a music store or trying to find a job doing repping for a manufacturer or something like that, I went into the merch side of things and started working for a company locally here in Atlanta they have a screen printing department, and that's initially who I got hired for. And then they figured out that I was not really cut out to just stand there and do screen printing stuff. So they brought me in as they expanded their company to do a lot more kitting projects for their bigger clients and things like that, because I have an attention to detail, customer service, all of that, and leadership skills to where I could have a team of people underneath me working on multiple projects at one time. It was a good experience. But really what I was looking at, kind of dumbly but a little bit smart, was, well, really as musicians, we're glorified T-shirt salespeople. So if I can get an employee discount on, bulk goods, I could put out better quality T-shirts with better art and so on and so forth, not have to get just the lowest quality Gildan T-shirt, because that's what I can afford to get a bulk, manufactured. And they do all manner of branding. If you've done any trade show stuff, you can get phone covers, tablet covers, laptop covers, backpacks, mugs, water bottle, like anything that can have branding on it, not just for musicians, but larger corporations, whether they're restaurant corporations or banks or whomever, real corporate branding. To have access to that kind of manufacturing, I had thoughts for a lot of this stuff, and I still have a relationship with the company. I'm not working with them anymore because I need to get back to work on this stuff. But it did a few things for me that you kind of lose perspective on when you're busy on the grind as an independent contractor.
Well, one of the mistakes that musicians make, and we all think that we have to have a singular focus where everything is the one thing, the one goal. But great music is made by living life, and great ideas come from being around other people. And so when I'm always looking at other industries to help me decide what my next thing is. And so and usually it's not the music business or music in general. It's usually sometimes things that are not related to music at all. Things that where people are blazing trails in ways that are very different than anyone in their particular purview. And I'll see something and I'll go, oh, so that's how that works. You know, if I kind of tweak this a little bit, I can, and being able to get on the inside of the merch business, now you know sort of how does that T-shirt or that cup or that ink pen, whatever it is, now you know how it goes from here to here.
Right.
And then your wheels can turn. If you're just sitting at home just fiendishly working on your music, you never get the benefit of that perspective. That's smart to me. It's not just trying to step back to relax a little bit. You're learning some stuff.
Yeah, and it matters. Like I had ideas along the way in trying to maintain maybe some kind of a side project with that same company, and we may come back and revisit it because I spoke with the higher ups about it. But from a band perspective, they're much more focused on larger corporate fish
of course.
than doing band stuff. Like when they were a smaller company, they did Zach Brown's merch. And then Zach Brown got big enough to where he could get his own screen printing company.
Yeah. That generally was what happens.
Like things like that just kind of phased themselves out for a lot of bands, and they didn't really need to be as competitive with smaller scale fish. They were just going to do like, I need 200 shirts.
Right.
Like to me, that's a lot of shirts. To a lot of smaller bands, that's a lot of shirts. But when you're dealing with somebody who's buying 4,000 shirts at a time.
They want somebody like Salesforce who's going to have a big convention, is going to give a bunch of T-shirts away that say Salesforce.
Yeah.
And, the whatever convention it particularly is.
Or even beyond that, like they had big companies like Burger King. They do do their uniform program, and they're all wearing T-shirts now.
Yeah.
And they would order somewhere around 32,000 shirts at a time.
Wow.
And because of the high turnover rate with teenage employees, they constantly are ordering tons nationally.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. When you're thinking about those kind of numbers, you're like, I just need my 200 T-shirts. Like, you're just not going to be a priority from a customer service standpoint. Sure. They, at that point, can't really justify a larger department spending the time because I'm going to be fussy at 200 shirts.
Yeah.
Whereas so is Burger King. But there's a whole lot more dollars coming on the end of that fussiness.
Right.
So anyway, that job did a couple of things. Besides that stuff, getting on a regular paycheck, if you've been working as an independent contractor, doing all your own taxes and everything, if you need to borrow money, it's hard to do.
Oh, yeah.
It's really hard to get a good credit rating. I'd been off credit cards for a long time because we all made that mistake in college, so I hadn't had one for a long time. But as soon as I got on a regular payroll, my credit score jumped up. Yeah. I was able to do some credit borrowing, which has been very good for a lot of things. So that's allowed me to do some purchasing along the way. That brings me to here today. So if you're struggling between stuff, don't discount a day job for a minute.
Right.
It doesn't have to be for 20 years. It does not have to be for 20 years. You might find that you really enjoy something.
It's kind of like my first marriage. It doesn't have to be forever.
Yeah. As long as it ends. So that helped me. I kind of, before we talk about the rest of this part of my home studio and what I'm going to need to do for upgrading or not upgrade or whatever the best advice that we can take, and hopefully you'll take all of this with a grain of salt for whatever your considerations are. 6 thoughts just shot through my head in a second. So squirrel, pardon the synapse firing. Where like you turn 45, and then there's weird little brain things like that, and then your lower back, and then probably prostate and other things that you're not going to be too pleased with anymore. Like things you don't think you're old, and then your body tells you no.
Yeah,
you old man. So my thought was in funding the record, because it's also a good way of marketing online as well. I don't generally like GoFundMes, but I love the idea of Patreon. And I think both platforms can be useful in pre-sale for a record. So wanting to do something like that, but also wanting to be in a situation where I knew I couldn't emotionally handle it if I failed a fundraising campaign. So I needed to get my act together with that. And in part of my wanting to get my act together with that, I wanted to make sure that I knew what my budget was to make the record and that I could not fail at that.
Sure.
So even if the marketing side of it didn't bring in the funding in a pre-sale that I would necessarily want from my fan base or my culture, knowing that I could still complete the recording process, then at least I could still make good on the whole, the whole of everything.
You'd be able to come out with something that you could put in people's ears.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
we could go down. We'll save the conversation about Patreons and stuff for another one. That's a whole rabbit hole that most people that do it don't do it right. But okay. Anyway.
Agreed. So like I've been sitting back on my heels for a few years, but I've also been studying, watching what everybody does. Some things that people seem like they're doing great, I just don't think that I could do. It just doesn't feel comfortable or right for me. So we're kind of in this amazing period in history where you really can do anything.
Yeah.
I'm just doing this. This has the potential to be seen, far beyond what I think my reach is and far beyond what you think your reach is. Yeah. You just don't know. You just kind of throw it out there and then something takes off and to me, YouTube in particular, I think the best thing about YouTube is education.
Oh, yeah.
I think above all other content type ideas, like these kinds of things where you can talk about whether it's music lessons or technology lessons or recording lessons or any of that stuff.
I learned to fix my kitchen sink about a month ago. I put a whole new kitchen sink in. I'm the least, when it comes to that, computers and stuff, man, I'm all over that. But if it comes to anything that, like, I need a new deck, I could not build a new deck to save my life. Now, I have friends that are great at that. But so I had a choice. I could either call a plumber because my sink was broken, or I could go to YouTube and I could learn exactly what I needed to do. Once we picked out the fixture, learn exactly how to put it in before I lifted a hand. And a month later, it's still working great. Everything's fabulous. My wife's super happy.
Brian Stevens,
for once.
Yes, that gets another Ted Bundy.
Yeah. So YouTube, especially for education, because there's so many things that people need to learn, and to your point of being here today, there's education that's obvious. In your case, this is this chord, this is this scale, this is this mode. But there's all these other ways that you can share your journey as you are getting educated on something.
Right.
And all of a sudden that becomes valuable for other people. Some people that are exactly where you're at, and then some people that they're not that far along in the continuum, but they're going to be. And YouTube is a wonderful repository because maybe 6 months from now, someone happens upon this video and the things that we're going to be talking about with computers and stuff, it hits them right at the exact time. It answers the questions that they need answered, and they can move forward a lot quicker. You're actually, you're taking some of the friction out by and that's education. We don't think of it as education because we just think, well, I'm lost. I mean, you're sharing your journey, and us having this conversation about your recording setup and what you can do and what the possibilities are. Hopefully that's going to help other people that are watching too. So with the computer you got an i7, it's about a 2012. So you're on the fence.
Yeah.
You could possibly, if you hear dogs, my dogs are going nuts because they normally like to come and sit in here when I do this thing. But usually it's either just me or it's somebody they've seen a gazillion times. With a new person, they're kind of noisy. And they're noisy down there.
I got 50% on that. Like one was into the belly rub, one was not having it. So
yeah, the one that's yapping now is like, who's that? I hear them talking. Anyway, so with the 2012 Mac Mini, you're on the precipice of you can spend a little bit of money and make a few upgrades and maybe get another year or two out of it. Or you could, and again, this all is predicated on the budget that you have to spend. you can go ahead and move into the next thing. And if you make the right choice and you put your money in the right place, you might get another 5 years out of whatever your next choice is.
Right.
And so I won't ask a particular dollar figure because maybe you don't even know. But I would say, first off, the first step is decide how much you can spend, because that's going to inform your choices. If I tell you that there's an option to spend, $3,000 on a computer that will that's as good as anything else that you can get now, that might actually cost you $14,000 because that same company wants to make $14,000. But if there's an alternative that's $3,000, if you were going to spend 8 or 9, you're like, man, I got more money to spend. But if you were going to spend 1,000, it's not even inside the realm of possibility.
Right.
So I would say you're on the precipice. You can spend the easiest thing you could do right this moment. That's a few $100s with the machine that you have, because you've got it maxed out with RAM at this point. The only thing that you can do is put solid state drives in it. Now, you will see, even over the Fusion drives, you'll see a huge performance bump. And especially if you get like Samsung Evo 860s, you can get them all day long, a terabyte for $140. When I was buying terabyte drives to first start putting them into my computers, they were $600 a piece. And now they've come down. You can get if you want to spend a little more money, about $240, $250, I think, you can get a 2 terabyte drive. And if I'm right, I'm thinking the Mac Minis that I've got downstairs might be 2014s, but they're quad cores. But if you do SSDs, because the drive you're taking out is a much bigger drive, OWC makes a little caddy that will actually let you put 2 SSDs in the same spot that you originally had put one mechanical drive. So I would tell you probably go with the 2 1 terabyte SSDs. That way you've got a system drive that'll hold your OS and all of your applications, and it'll hold a few of the things that you'll need that you don't need to use real time. But then you've got this other 1 terabyte drive. If you use Logic, if you use anything that has VSTs, that needs to be on another drive.
Okay.
It's not as much of a problem if you have an SSD, because you're not actually you don't have a spinning platter that you're having to jump around on. But just in terms of the throughput that you can get down the bus, it's a lot better to do. So if you were to get 2 1 terabyte drives, you could put all of your VST stuff, all of your maybe loops that you're playing in real time that you haven't rendered yet. You could put all that stuff on that secondary drive, and you're going to get a lot of mileage out of that computer, at least another year or two, depending on exactly what SKU it is. Yeah. If it'll go up to Mojave, you could probably sit on that thing another 2 or 3 years, possibly. It really just depends on the exact SKU that you got. But that's the one thing that I would, if you want to maybe put your money into some other places that are equally as important as the computer, then that's the least expensive way to kind of get a big bump. And obviously you want to try and check this. If you just search, there's actually a website that has every Mac that's ever been made, and it'll tell you all of the specs, including updated stuff. Like I have that computer that's on over there that I do some of my graphic stuff on. Originally, it only would hold, by the spec, it would only hold 16 gigs of RAM. But now, if you look, it's been tested that it actually will hold 64 or something.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I just filled that thing up because it's cheap to do that on something like that. I'm just operating to use Photoshop and things like that. So if you just do a search for the model number and it's usually within the first couple of things in Google that you can go to. And you can find out exactly like how high can you go up on the OS. And then that's when you start looking at, all right, well, what recording software are you using? Are you still in Pro Tools? Mm-hmm. Okay. So then you can look and see, all right, well, if it goes up to Mojave, then this discussion's over at this point. Because you can get into Mojave and with the machine that you have with some SSDs, and the only place that you're going to end up coming up short, depending on what plugins you use, is when it comes to mix. You can record all day long on that computer you have and get all kinds of super high track count, especially because of the SSDs. And yeah, my dogs are acting up. You can hear them. Hopefully these Heil microphones that have such great rejection, they have like the
I feel
cylinder
rejected right now.
They have the cylinder of sound that it rejects everything else. Hopefully you won't hear my wife hollering at my dogs. I would tell you if your primary gets to our next thing, which is what is the purpose for the system that you're trying to set up?
Right.
If you're either going to go somewhere else to mix, if you know you don't have a great room and all your mixes are real skewed, you can never get a good balance when you're going to have to go somewhere else, then yeah, think about making a computer that's mainly for tracking. And you interface-wise, what are you using for interfaces?
All right. So this is probably a good way to jump in with what I have spent money on in the last couple of years along the way.
All right. And what can we still use?
Yeah, what can we still use in all manner of things.
Cool.
So this laptop here, this is a mid-2012 solid-state drive that I got refurb MacBook Pro that I got from OWC.
Yep.
And the reason I got this one is because it's one of the last ones that still has so many port configurations on it.
Yep.
And for the rest of what I've been dealing with, anytime you update a thing because of the change from FireWire 400 to FireWire 800 to Thunderbolt to all these things, now you need adapters and hubs for lots of things. So buying one thing doesn't necessarily cure all ills if you're not prepared to backload the need to plug in older hard drives with all of that stuff too, because you don't want to just throw away. I mean, you should be buying new drives from time to time because drives will fail. It's only a matter of time. But if you still have useful drives with your current setup like I do, that they're not really that old, because some of those I bought just before I started the demo process of the new record. And then we really only used that for, I think I worked my way through the demos in less than 2 months for 20 compositions and didn't get them to completion, but that's where I stopped.
Right.
So not talking about heavy spinning usage or having them on for a long period of time. So they're still fairly fresh drives.
Yeah.
But that is a consideration of how does everything connect with everything. So I bought this particular computer for that because I also wanted to be able to get a bit more mobile. Not that a Mac Mini is hard to carry around, but then you've got to carry a monitor and all of that stuff. Yeah. So with other friends of mine that I was talking about, the idea of having something that was even a clone of your home Mac, to where everything that's there is everything that's here. So I never did the cloning thing, but obviously bought this machine, and it's just really been an internet machine for the time being, which really, I mean, my phone is probably the most powerful computer I have right now. And this is just an 8 Plus. And it, like, when I got it, it was like, oh my God. And now there's even newer phones since then. So with that, I have not updated Pro Tools yet. So I'm probably thinking whatever Pro Tools 12 version is going to happen.
I think they just came out with it's 2019 is what they call it now, but it's 0.10. I just downloaded it today and installed it on a new machine, and it runs great.
I did look. Both these computers will take Mojave.
Great.
I know there is problems with Catalina.
Oh yeah.
For a lot of stuff, like
we won't be going to that for a year.
Yeah. So I'm still at like whatever 10.6 on the Mac Mini, and this guy, he shipped with. Let me remember. Sierra, not even High Sierra. So. And I've not updated this one because I didn't know exactly what I was doing with the cloning thing, and that's just how long I've been trying to make these decisions. Sure. But they'll both take Mojave. Yeah. I almost went ahead and jumped and put Mojave on this one just so I could see how I like it before I start doing stuff on the Mini.
I'll tell you something you don't want to hear, but it's actually the thing to do. Do it as a completely fresh install.
Yeah, I've already backed up all the hard drives and all that stuff. So whenever I
People
do it,
don't like to hear that, but yeah.
No, I agree. That's the way.
Yeah,
of
especially
the world.
when you're making when they're doing like a point revision on an operating system, it's cool to just go from one to the other. Or if you're going from one stage, like I've got a couple of machines that I went up from High Sierra to Mojave. Yeah. And it did fine. But like if you're going as far as you're going, I would just do the USB option. You just plug a USB that's formatted and just do a completely fresh install. You'd be really surprised. That'll help your performance too.
Yeah.
It'll definitely help with the performance on the computer. But that's the big thing right now with people that I talk to with Macs. If you have an older Mac, but it'll go up to Mojave, great. You don't necessarily have to get a new computer. And like with that laptop right there, especially if it's got an SSD in it and you've got as much RAM as you can get into it, then you're good. You're good. You'll be fine.
So that's the situation with that.
Okay.
Thinking about them being older machines and with the mixed consideration and traveling, I did this at 2 different times. At one point, I was thinking, well, I need a traveling interface. And if you are a guitar player, the HX Stomp from Line6 is a ridiculously incredible little box.
Yeah.
Like, I think for everything it does, it may be a sleeper that everybody hasn't really picked up on, because it doesn't have the CPU, obviously, of the Helix and all of that stuff, but in its engine, it's all of the same models of everything that it has, but it also will work as a recording interface. It'll work with your DAW to where you can track. It will automatically track a clean signal for you, and if you want to reamp, it will send it back out to the Stomp and do that stuff as well. So for like if you're doing hotel demos or you need to just in an emergency do a track or something like that, it's incredibly powerful. And I mean, it's this big.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
So I got that. Also thinking that I do a lot of traveling with corporate bands and stuff like that. So I need an elegant, simple thing for in-ear rigs and things like that. Still haven't integrated it because it does so many things that I have yet to really be 100% satisfied with setting up a virtual pedal board with that alone. Right. Because the one thing is for everything it does, it only has 3 buttons. So what a lot of guys are doing are getting other little MIDI foot controllers so that you can turn things off. Because you can have 6 effects running at one time. But with only 3 buttons, if you do any tap tempo stuff, well, that's 1 button gone away that you can't turn the delay off and on with. You can program multi effects to 1 button, but you'd be turning off 3 effects with 1.
Right, you're nesting
swapping
stuff for for the limited number of buttons that you got.
So there wouldn't be a way to cherry pick through them. Like if you hit it twice, you'd be able to get this other function. So
and then you got to do the math on how many times do I need to hit this button to make this function.
Which you're in the middle of playing a thing. I'm the world's worst because I'm literally a knuckle dragging tube amp guitar player. Like as soon as something stops working, I'm going to throw it.
Sure.
And then I'm going to plug straight into the amp. And if I don't have an amp with me, I'm just going to throw something and be like, well, that happened.
So
I have that.
Yeah,
but
that's a good interface.
But beyond that, like it's great as an interface for that. And then I found a deal at Sweetwater, bump for Sweetwater.com. For an open box deal on an Apollo Duo quad.
Nice.
So I've started buying UA plugins, which are incredible, which was already an upgrade from everything that I was doing with my old Waves bundle from 2012. Yeah. Which they all still sound great. I still have them. Yeah. But having all of that processing offboarded here. Right. So that's sort of what I started thinking about is computers obviously going to come and go. Sure. Doing a guitar tracking studio that is going to be my bread and butter for probably the rest of my life. I don't have a great room. Right. If I need to record drums, I'm going to come to your place. Right. Or a place like yours where there is a great room and there's a lot more opportunity for that stuff. And I can show up with a hard drive and be like, that's it. Let's do the thing.
So that brings us to an important point when it comes to interfaces. So many times when I'm talking to people, they want to buy, they want to buy the top of the line in any particular brand with the most capabilities and the most things that it can do. The better thing to do is to be very exact about what will I be doing and find the best interface that will fit that use case, and maybe give you a little bit of wiggle room on the top end, so that if you need, let's say you get an interface that has 2 analog inputs, but it also has an ADAT light pipe. Okay, great. So right now you need 2 inputs, but later maybe you need to be able to do more tracks at once. Then you can always add one of those nice little 8-channel mic preamps that has the ADAT light pipe on it. All of a sudden now you got a 10-channel interface.
Which I have one of those.
Oh, cool.
I got Behringer. Now that they own Midas, they make a very nice little 8-channel mic pre with all Midas pre's.
Yep. I was just looking at that the other day. Yeah, it's great.
So that with an Apollo Duo, it's literally a travel interface, but clearly the Digi 002 is a Polaroid camera.
Yeah. So choose the interface that's going to help you do the thing that you are doing. Unlike most people, when I started putting a studio together, I from the jump knew that I was going to do more than just record drums. So I always needed to be able to do the most I could possibly do. So I was always looking at, and not just the top of the line stuff for the sake of having it, but within a certain budget constraint, what is the most mileage I could get per dollar. But the smarter thing for most people is, if you play guitar, look at things that are going to help you optimize for recording guitar. If you play bass, same kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you're a keyboard player, look for things that optimize both for getting in analog signals, but then something that has some kind of MIDI interface component if you have a lot of other keyboards that need MIDI. Or, if you now so much of the newer MIDI's on USB, it's not as much a consideration. But most guys that are sure enough keyboard players have got, think about how many keyboards does Eric Frampton have?
Yeah.
Like his house is probably a keyboard store.
It's like the Enterprise.
Yeah. And so a lot of those have got MIDI. And so having an interface that actually has MIDI in and out connections would be an important thing for a guy like that. Might not be important for you, might not be important for me, but it would be important for him. So think about specifically what you need. With drummers, 8 channels is sort of the minimum at this point. You can get it done with 4, kick, snare, and 2 overheads. I had to do that today with a session I did in town, but it was more it was the sound we were going for. It had nothing to do with the hardware, because the interface I was using had 48 inputs. It didn't matter, and I had a 32-channel console. So that's one of those things where 8-channel minimum for most drummers. So you need to start looking, like the bottom of your window is going to be, what are all the cheapest 8-channel interfaces, and then what are all the most expensive, and now let's find what really actually fits my budget. So think about, when it comes to the interface, what are the things you're going to do? If you're not doing any mixing, maybe you don't jump into you're not going to jump into what I'm going to suggest in a second. You just make the computer you have better. Max it out as much as you can max it out for what it can do, and then you spend that money in other places. So computer, think about what you have, what are the things that you can do to upgrade it, to max it out, and how much more are you going to get out of that. If you're going to get a couple of years out of it, it's worth looking at. And the interfaces, what are you exactly going to do? Not what could you do if you had all the capabilities in the world.
Right.
Because if you think about it, it may actually, like, if you need to come do drums, why do them at your house when you can go somewhere where it's set up to do great drums?
Right.
And you don't have all that expense.
Yeah. And if I'm not looking to open up a commercial studio,
right.
Because once you go down that rabbit hole, you need to justify the expense of this stuff.
Right.
And if you have the space, you have the gear, the clientele will help keep the lights on while you're doing all of that. For me, even if I did want to do that, I could do a rehearsal. I could record demos with what I have exactly without even changing anything right now.
Right.
But it just doesn't make any sense, because even if I did want to do one album recording, how many albums am I going to make in a year of my own
Right.
without taking on clients?
Sure.
It's just expenses that just don't make sense for my particular business.
Right. Well, you made a real smart choice in getting the Apollo, because if you're not going to update your computer and you have a real limited ceiling on the processing power that you'll be able to get with plugins, the Apollo interfaces are great because they've got that processing power for their plugins.
Yeah.
And, I do have to say at this point that I'm a Waves brand ambassador. I don't own the company, but I use all their stuff and have for a long time. But I also use the Universal Audio stuff. Absolutely love it too. Every great carpenter has at least 2 different kinds of hammers.
Oh, yeah.
And at least 2 different kinds of pliers, and at least 8 different kinds of screwdrivers. Anyway, so I just had, in full disclosure, I have to say that. But that's one of the advantages over anybody's interface. If you go with the Apollo stuff, the UA stuff, is that you can get an interface that has processing power for plugins. And they're great plugins. They're not the first person to do it, but they're the first, in my opinion, the first company to do it that actually made really good plugins.
Yeah.
I mean, TC Electronics, a lot of other people have done that, but they were crappy interfaces and they didn't work well. But the UA stuff, fabulous.
And I've tried to be smart about it. Like, I know with the Waves bundle that I have, even though it's older, auditioning everything that came in that bundle, I knew that I used the SSL stuff the most.
Right.
That's
and
just
you could still upgrade it.
Yeah,
you can pay a little bit of money.
Yeah,
and upgrade it.
like, and I know that even the upgraded Waves SSL stuff sounds incredible.
Oh, it's awesome.
The
Use it every day.
UA SSL sounds great too.
Yep.
I don't need to buy I don't need to replace the entire Waves bundle because I know I don't use everything in that.
Right.
Like, I overshot when I got that, expecting that, like, I'm going to be a mix engineer.
Yeah,
I'm going to get better at this. And then you just
find out that crap's hard.
Yeah. It's a lot, and to not have an opportunity to use everything, you just find that really you use the stuff you need to use that gets you the results, that gets you, like, this as a producer, you just need to get to a decision.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you could make it better, but there's a diminishing return of refinement the further you go down looking for, the perfect sweetening thing. Like, at some point, you never finish a project, you abandon it. You just have to, because you just have to make a decision to move on to the next thing.
For me, at this point, I think I own most, except for maybe a few new things. I've got most of the plugins that are commercially available, and the only reason I made that investment is because I work with so many different kinds of people, and when they bring their things in or when they send me their tracks, I need to, as much as I can, be able to open up their session and hear what they heard. And if it's someone who I'm touching up mixes for, I need to be able to use the same stuff that they used. So instead of starting from scratch. But for most people, like, you don't need the Waves SSL and the UA version of the SSL and the Plugin Alliance version of the SSL. Like, find the SSL that works with what you're doing. And if the Apollo and that processing inside of there works for what you're doing, then you sink your money into theirs. If you look at the cost benefit and you go, well, you know what? I really like the Wave stuff. I've already got it, and it's $100 to upgrade it. Then that's the way you go there. You really have to. When it comes to most people, like, one variety, one flavor of a thing is fine.
Yeah.
If you want to get deep in the weeds later and you got a little extra money, or your Uncle Sal dies and leaves you something, then go ahead and splurge on some things. But look at where you're at and see what the cost benefit is for either one of those. So as far as plugins, what's funny is now you couldn't say this 5 years ago, so many of the plugins that come with the DAW now can get you so stinking close. They really can, if you know how to use them.
Even the in-the-box Pro Tools one from Pro Tools 10 that I'm still running, like, I use those EQs constantly. If you just need to grab one, They sound great.
People have no idea. Phil Tan, who's a famous mix engineer in town, people have no idea. They don't even know when they're listening that how many of the stock Digi Avid plugins he's used on. I mean, Grammy winning #1 hit songs. It really is. It's the carpenter and not necessarily the tools.
Yeah.
Now the tools, obviously, at a certain point, the tools will help you do your job better if you already do your job well.
Right.
That's why certain people buy the cheapest Home Depot saw that you can get that has a plug-in battery that lasts 3 minutes, because I saw like branches like this. I'm not a lumberjack. I'm not taking down big trees.
Yeah.
So I can get away with the cheap one. But if my job were cutting down trees, I would buy the expensive one. So I hope that analogy works for everybody.
Yeah. So like the rest of it too, like I kind of have the philosophy, and at least it's a philosophy for the moment. When you're first learning to do this stuff, I'll do, you kind of get as much as you can so that you can learn as much as you can and just see what's working for you. It's the same way when you're a guitar player or a drummer or any musician. When you're working towards finding your sound, if you think about someone like Adam Jones, he still records with the same JCM 800. Or if you think about Tom Morello, like the sound of Tom Morello is that Strat with a JCM 800.
Right.
And he's never going to get rid of it because he's found his sound. And maybe it's not perfect. I've certainly played enough JCM 800s to know that they're not perfect for everything that I do. Mm-hmm. But if you find the thing that allows you to create the stuff, like a need to deviate a whole lot from that it's not necessary for everybody. If you're Tom Morello and like, this is my sound, this is what I do, and you can get it done, you get it done. Yeah. He probably has lots of other amps too, but that's just the one. For me, I am not an amp model guy. Like using plugins like was it Guitar Rig? That's the Waves version.
Yeah, I think that's what it's called.
I think that's what that's called. There's a bunch of different ones. There's Amplitude. I've messed with a bunch of those. Yeah. And
Plugin Alliance has a bunch
really
of
cool.
them, yeah.
The Line6 stuff, like years ago, I had the old original kidney-shaped Pod 1.0. Like you check things out. Like I even had the much maligned and equally deserving of its wretched reputation, the Digitech RP200.
Woo!
It was a terrible little thing, but I mean, it was a cool thing to just have. I never gigged with it or anything, but just another gizmo to have around and be like, what does this stuff do? Technology was changing, and you learn what you can about it. Right. That was one of the hesitations for me with the HX Stomp was, okay, well, this would be cool on the fly if I needed to do something, and the models do sound great, but I don't want to be I don't want that to be my Swiss Army knife of things. I have the amps that I have. Yeah. I have a really good JCM 900. Mm-hmm. I have Orange amplifiers since I've been working for them for so many years, and their stuff is great. And for years before I got a Marshall, that was my Marshall sound, was that Britishy thing that Orange does. Mm-hmm. I still have my original 2005 PV JSX, which that thing sounds incredible.
It's a great amp.
I've toured like crazy with that thing. It's super versatile. Amp. And plus, if you know anything about this stuff, like really the place that I got interested is tone shaping with pedals. Because there's such a incredible diverse culture out there now with all these boutique pedal builders, whether it's JHS or Wampler or, I mean, there's so many of them. And they're incredible. You can get every different iteration of a clone of something that the original manufacturer doesn't make anymore, or what have you. Like you can have all of these different flavors and stuff. And even though something like the HX Stomp does that, if I were traveling, that's amazing because I can have one thing with me and I know, well, I don't have a big muff with me, but I have one in here. So this is what the track calls for, at least in the moment. If I can do it better when I get home,
then you'll do it.
Then I'll use the real thing. But like, I don't have a real tone bender, like a like there's all kinds of boutique real stuff that I'd love to have. I'm not chasing stuff to that degree of things. But knowing that I'm that guy, I've spent money on, decent microphones, having a good ribbon and a good dynamic microphone, like all of the engineers and records that I really love.
Definitely something for us to talk about.
That's the thing. A ribbon and a 57 on a good cabinet, that's Brendan O'Brien uses that stuff all day long. And every record he made is one of my favorite records. Like, it's
he
incredible.
doesn't make bad records.
Like, Tim Pierce swears by that kind of recording technique. And if you don't know who Tim Pierce is, your ears have heard Tim Pierce on more things than you could possibly imagine, because he's like a Steve Lukather. He's just another one of those guys that has been on all of the right sessions at all the right times.
And he might have been on your Burger King commercial too, you know?
Maybe so. So, like, I was doing that before, but also to keep in the world of, I want to stay a bit analog with those types of things, but there are some modern conveniences. I got a universal audio aux top amp box, which is great because it's a load box, so you can use it without a speaker cabinet, which is incredible. But it's also a reactive load, so you can use it as an attenuator.
Oh, nice. Like a power soak kind of thing? Yeah.
So, like, you can, if you were using it live and, you know, how many times you go to a gig and, like, it's too loud, but your amp is right in the sweet spot. You're like, I really don't want to move this.
Come on.
You can notch it.
That's nice.
And knock it down from there. But it's really cool because there's plenty of things that do attenuation, but not having the reactive load component of it.
Right.
Because the resistance, the ohm resistance that's coming off of a speaker changes as you're playing with it. It's constantly varying as you're playing, and you feel that as you play, especially if you're doing high voltage tube amplifiers. One of the reasons we like high voltage tube amplifiers is you may not be aware of it, but you feel that.
Of
like
course.
it's all a part of how all of that stuff works. So, to me, and I know there's a lot of different products. Sir has a great product for that. I think even Boss has one now that's supposed to be really good. I've not tried that one yet. But they all have this reactive load component to it. And it does make a difference if you're trying to do silent recording to not have to use a modeler. You're just modeling the back end. Right. And it's UA stuff. It's incredible. Like all of the modeling they've done, like with their Ocean Way algorithms and stuff, like it's incredible. And there's a small room, you know, built into the aux that you can program. You don't have to have an iPad to run with it,
right?
But you can set it up at home and then have, like, I forget, like 5 or 6. Somebody can correct me on the internet because I know the internet's really good at that. But like 5 or 6, they call them rigs. They're just different cabinets with different mic combinations. You can change, you know, where the microphones are on the speaker, and, you know, are they on axis, are they off axis? It's really deep what you can do just on that.
Yeah.
And it's SPDIF or SPDIF or however you say that. So again, some kind of light pipe connectivity back into your computer, so it stays in the digital realm. And I've done some sessions with that since I've picked it up. It's incredible.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, like I don't know that I would, if I had the time, to prefer to mic things up, because I know what sound I get when I use that particular setup, because I found the thing that works for me.
Right.
You know, the only thing I would do from now is like graduate up to a proper Royer.
Oh,
you know?
there you go. Yeah.
But that's a financial commitment of things.
Right.
But the thing about that, I would rather spend the money on great amps, great guitars, great pedals, great microphones, interfaces next, computers. These are really rented.
Yeah, at this point, you just have to, when you're making a computer purchase, you really are just thinking, well, I'll keep it a little while.
Yeah, I don't play this. Like, this is not a tactile thing that I need to, like, it needs to function and respond the way that I need it to respond. But knowing that I'm going to replace
stated purpose.
any computer, then, like, that's not the thing I need to worry about. I need to have a good Telecaster more than that.
I'm going to go on a tangent for just a second, because I had this conversation with a bass player maybe within the last month. We're talking about computers for recording, but don't discount all the other possibilities. Like, this guy's question was
email. He's a bass player. Come on, man.
Well, like right now we're multi-tracking these two microphones over on an iPad. Now, I could have put a laptop there, and there's a laptop right next to it that's actually for Skype. But when it came to recording, I mean, I could have put a laptop there, but what made a whole lot of sense for me and the use case I needed was an iPad. And it actually ended up being less expensive too. That helps. But so we're talking about computers, but there's a guy I just started following on YouTube, Henny something or other. And if he ever saw this, he'd get mad I didn't remember his name.
Henny Bill?
I don't know. He's a hip hop guy, but
Okay.
he within the last year or two, he's started doing all of his recording, all of his virtual synth stuff. Everything's on an iPad Pro, and he's got a lot of great YouTube videos about how he does that. I mean, I've even seen footage of him going to recording sessions, writing sessions. And his rig is like a controller and an iPad.
Wow.
So let's don't limit ourselves in terms of the medium or the modality that we're using. As long as it'll record digital audio, it could be anything. I bought a Chromebook, a $500 Chromebook. Here's a we're going to go on a real tangent here. I hope you guys like this. All right, so
It's the internet, man. It's deep.
so the last time I bought a MacBook Pro, it's been probably 4 or 5 years, and I spent $5,000. Like, I spent a lot on it. I basically got the best of everything I could get, so that I could go at the time I had the budget for it. I'm like, all right, let's max everything out, make everything the best it can be, so I can go as long as I can go on it. And one of the hacks for me being able to go longer is I went and bought a $500 Chromebook to do all of my stuff that I do with office stuff. So now, instead of a $5,000 MacBook Pro doing my email and stuff, I'm doing that on a cheap Chromebook, so that can stay in my bag. Now when I go travel, I carry 2 laptops now, but I don't worry about the longevity of that MacBook Pro. I'm not going to blow out a keyboard. I'm not going to have all these things that are going to require all these. I've actually had displays replaced on older MacBook Pros and stuff. I don't have to worry about those things because I've got less clock hours on all of the mundane stuff. So that's one other possibility when you're putting these things together. You're saving a little money here, you're spending a little extra money there. There may be a use case for you to say, all right, well, I only can have one computer and it needs to do everything. Well, maybe not.
Right.
Maybe you can do all of your email and your word processing and your invoicing and everything from an iPad. So you get a cheaper iPad or you get a Chromebook. The Chromebooks are great. I did a lot of research. I just happened to find a Chromebook that was actually a Windows laptop that they made one, Lenovo made one model that they just took one of their Windows laptops that was already spec'd out really, really well. And because they put Chrome OS on it, they couldn't sell it for twice as much money. So, there's decisions like that you can make. And it sounds weird to put this into this conversation, but there are things that you can do to maximize the dollar that you spend that might not be quite so obvious.
Yeah.
So that's a possibility too. So maybe your choice medium, your modality for recording doesn't have to be a laptop. It doesn't have to be a Mac Mini. Maybe, like my bass player friend, all you need is a 1 or 2 channel interface that will work with an iPad, and you get Aria, I think is the name of that software I'm using right there. It'll record 24 inputs.
Oh, wow.
You can do, if you've got an interface that'll work with an iPad and it has 24 inputs, you can do it on an iPad. So there are a lot of possibilities. Again, you just have to think about what your use case is. And in his case, he didn't have a whole lot of room. He needed to be able to travel. He could only buy one interface and one thing to record with. And he had all of these very specific needs. I'm like, man, you need to get an iPad Pro and this particular interface, and you're done. Like, because he's already got basses and bass, all the preamps and stuff. He's got that part of it covered.
Right.
He's got the front end, and all he needed was just, I need to be able to hear what they send me in a stereo file and be able to track a mono signal. Great. That opens up a lot of possibility.
Oh, yeah.
So again, we're just going back to what's your use case? What is the thing you're trying to do? And again, what budget do you have to spend? That's definitely something to think about too.
Because it's fascinating. Like nowadays, there was a point in time when the home computer became a thing that everybody started to adopt.
Yeah.
And that's really what, late 80s, early 90s when you started to, like, okay, mid 80s if you're talking about like the Apple IIc and the Commodore 64.
Dude, I had a trash 80. Man, I go that far back, like 4th grade with a trash 80 programming video games.
Like So they've been around a little bit longer, but really the idea of like most people wanting to have email and AOL and all of that stuff. You're really talking about early 90s, mid 90s when everybody's got a home computer now. Not everybody had a home computer when I was growing up.
Right.
So that's really neat. And now smartphones are such a thing that not everybody needs a laptop or a home computer because most of what everybody's going to do, they're going to do with this. Right. Or an iPad if they want a little bit more screen stuff. Yeah. But even now, beyond that, with smart TVs or a Chromecast thing or a Roku or an Apple TV, like I have all Apple products. And the fact that everything just works together is incredible. The things that you can do, like because this phone can shoot 4K video, but only on this camera. So you can't face it at you
right, and
be able to monitor that. Yeah. But with screen mirroring on a 4K Apple TV, on a 65-inch smart television sitting on the wall, you can set it up the way that you need to see it, and you can monitor it there and know that the shot looks
I
like
do
the
that
shot.
Exact same when I need to use my. I mean, we've got tons of different cameras and stuff around here that I use. But if I'm going to shoot with my phone, so I use Filmic Pro on my 8 Plus. And I have either my iPad or one of these iPod Touches, or that's an old 6 Plus, and I'm running the remote app. So so I can use the good camera.
Like we'll have to talk about that because I still have my old 5.
Yep.
It still works. I mean, it's perfectly great. It could be used for exactly this purpose, which is another reason I'm holding on to stuff like that. This is another thing that gets, can stay involved with that. And like between the, like most of my everyday computing I do on my phone now.
Right.
Like I very rarely do I need to be like, all right, I need to actually type.
Right.
And then I can go on here. But because of the cloud and I, talking about storage and other things like that, of course I have hard drives that I've used for like heavy data use storage. But then I have a professional Dropbox account. I have an iCloud account. So having access to things in so many multiple places, depending on what it is, or clients needing to send me stuff, or me needing to send stuff to people that are gonna work on a thing. It's amazing. You don't need to have exactly one machine and then worry about really taxing that. Like if this were my recording computer and it was my only access to do all of my internet fooling around, I'm going to wear this thing out just by spending so much time watching movies on it, watching videos and just playing games and whatever else. But having it more dedicated to, I really just do YouTube and very select things on this. And eventually it's going to be, the travel. Like I don't even travel with this too much. Like I either do everything with this or I got this specifically because I have some chart music readings apps.
Yep. That's what I use that one for.
That for me, I have them on here too.
Yep.
But another thing that's going to happen, kids, when you cross the 40 threshold, and
your eyes,
I'm the last one. Everybody in my family wears glasses. I'm the last one going, nope. I'm kidding myself because everybody in the family wears glasses. Like
I'm waiting for that new eye transplant surgery. I can get an eye as of a 15-year-old.
So like I have this, but then I also have apps that like if something happened to my rig, I literally could plug into my phone.
Yeah.
And there's a decent amp model in here. I could get through a gig. I've done rehearsals with my phone.
Yeah.
We really are living in an incredible age for all of this stuff. So I guess on the back end of the recording update, like the things that I need to do, whether you buy another computer or do you upgrade to Pro Tools 12 from Pro Tools 10? Because that one caveat of, okay, well, the Digi 002, that immediately goes away once I update the OS on that machine. Is it the greatest sounding interface in the world? No, I never even had it modded. I bought it used from a guy who wanted to get the 3, and he got a modded version of that. And I forget what all those mods were back in the day.
Blackline did a bunch of stuff.
And they sounded incredible, but my budget at the time was not allowing for that kind of thing.
I'm embarrassed to say that several interfaces ago, I had some Blackline mods done, and honestly, I got it back, and I know there was a difference, but for what it cost, I didn't really see an appreciable difference. And it's nothing against them. It's just that for what I was doing, it was kind of it was nice because I could say I had it done.
Yeah, and other things that I would consider, like I would love at some point, like SSL makes that little 6.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's knowing that I like the SSL channel strip sound. Something like that for my studio makes a lot more sense to have, rather than worry about, you know, what do the mic pre's sound like on that interface. Here's something that I know I love the sound of, regardless of the interface at some point. So I'm trying to think for my usage, knowing kind of the realm of like, these are the things that really work for me. Right. I don't know if that would happen. Like that TOF board that you had was amazing. Like just running audio through it immediately. It's like, wow.
Yeah. It sounded better.
What a difference, you know, a good console makes. So for me, something small, you know, might make a little more sense on that kind of stuff. Right. So I'm okay with that. If I needed an Avid or a DigiDesign interface, I have an 11 rack, which I never even integrated it into my rig. I got one used. It was gifted to me by a student.
You can get them cheap.
He got a Fractal. And he's like, I've got this laying around, and I did some work. I was like, I tell you what, we'll trade out. You know, we'll do a barter system on that, because maybe I can use that with, you know, the corporate band, or maybe I can use that. At the time I was thinking, maybe I will upgrade the OS so I can, but then I got to get rid of that thing. And the models in it sound pretty good. I have scrolled through it a few times. It's a decent interface. It's just not, as a recording interface, it's not what the Digio 2 was. Right. So it wasn't that interesting. I don't even think it has an ADAT input. So even using the Behringer Midas
you talking about the 11?
Yeah.
I haven't. It's funny because I've got one downstairs in I use it on my sequencing rig, mainly just to. It's the reason I got it. Number one, I got it cheap, $200 or something. But I got it because I needed a two output interface just to run my sequencing rig. But what I also wanted to do with that, and I've done it from time to time, is because it's got the mic input on it, I could actually bus out of my regular recording rig and send drums over to it and make these crazy lo-fi loops. It was I thought, well, okay, I'm going to spend $200 on an interface anyway. It'll also do this other thing, which is kind of cool. And I use it every once in a while. It's cool. But again, it's one of those where, you know, what I needed and what I bought something that was way more than I needed, but it was a great deal. So,
and even for the modeling stuff, because I have the Apollo with the Unison plugins that they have now, like I have a Sur PT100. Yep. I've got a Fuchs ODS 50, which like I know Andy Fuchs, and I've demoed his amps a lot. Like I've done them at the NAMM show, so I know those amps really well. The Brainworks model of all those amps, they're incredible. Yeah. And if you need to plug into a thing, and of course the processing's right on that, it's sounds that I would use. I don't need every amp. I just need the ones that I need. Right. So it's great for that. And then, you know, the HX Stomp, that's 2019 technology. The 11 rack is 2012, 2013.
It's old.
It's a bit old at this point, and they sound great, but comparatively, just what they're able to do in terms of the capturing of the models, that technology has improved incredibly. And I don't know what kind of updates they've done. Like, I don't know if I plug that thing and get it connected to the internet, I'd be like, oh, you can freshen up all of these sounds. Like, it may just be one of those things that I put in a rack, and it's like, well, I need it. It's there. Yeah. But I don't know that I would go to it. Right. You know?
So what other questions you have as far as things that you're thinking about bringing forward?
One question that I had in particular with Pro Tools, and I think I answered this for myself last night with my friend Adam Fox, who I think is still watching online. Hey, Adam. Adam is a guitar player, producer, songwriter, voiceover guy, all around just awesome dude. One of my best friends. He's great. We hang out and smoke cigars on the internet because he lives way on the West Coast. But we were talking the other night about, he just updated his Pro Tools, and one of the things that I have held back on Pro Tools, if you go through the Avid website, they really want to push you to the subscription. And I can understand why, from a business perspective, that they want to do that. But I really like the idea of just buying the software outright, you know, and just having it and not having to deal with that. But it's because of them pushing to a subscription, the price model is not exactly where I want it to be.
The thing I talk about when I talk about that is, number one, it's the world that we're moving into, or we've moved into it really.
Yeah.
There's still some people that you can just kind of buy, especially with plugins, you can just kind of buy the plugin. But the thing I'll say about the subscription model is, especially if you're doing limited choices, it lets you, at least as far as your overhead for the software, you can spread that out over time. Instead of, now a Pro Tools license is not expensive unless, like my Pro Tools HD is, I think it's $400 a year. And I've got a Pro Tools HD license and then just a regular Pro Tools license, so I can run 2 machines at once. I can work downstairs on one thing, and while it's doing whatever it's doing, I can come up here and work on something else.
See, now that's important to know. If I have one Pro Tools license and I have 2 machines, I can't run them at the same time.
Nope. You have to have 2 licenses. Which kind of...
What if I have a fishing license? Because I don't think those are as expensive.
Right. Yeah, and that's another thing when you're... Man, we could go really deep in this. Especially if you're buying a plug-in especially, that's similar, like, let's say the SSL stuff. There's some considerations. With some plug-in manufacturers, you have one license that you can run it on multiple machines, but not at the same time. So there's that variety. There's some that'll allow you to run, say, 2 or 3 instances. Like some of the plugins that I've got, they'll have 3 installs. So especially like with Plugin Alliance and a few other ones that lets you install onto a USB key, just a regular old USB flash drive becomes your dongle, then that's great because I can have 3 different USB keys. And if I have, just in this room alone, there are 3 Macs in this room alone. There's my MacBook Pro that's right there in my bag. There's an iMac there, and there's a 2012 Mac Pro up under there. I have had all 3 of them running in this room at the same time. Especially because I do some video editing stuff too. When I open those video editing programs, they leech onto those plugins too. So that's nice though. So I can have multiple things open, and even if I'm not using the plugin, it still plays well.
Yeah.
But if you've got multiple machines, one of the reasons I've got 2 computers downstairs, one that's my main recording DAW and one that's my MIDI virtual instrument rack sequencing computer, is the MIDI computer is slaved to the recording computer. So if somebody sends me something to mix and it's got a whole bunch of audio tracks and a whole bunch of VSTs, I don't have to run it on one system. I break the session up. I put all of the audio stuff on one computer on my main DAW. I take all of the VST stuff. Now you can freeze tracks and things like that, but there are times when I'm running that stuff back through processing when I'm mixing. So I may take like an organ VST and I don't have time to print it, but I may be running it through a tube compressor while I'm doing my mix. So I can do those things in real time and work the 2 at the same time. So having 2 Pro Tools licenses, I didn't need HD for both of them. I just needed 2 Pro Tools. I've got an HD rig with the interfaces and stuff. I had to have that one. But if you've got the money to spend on 2 licenses of Pro Tools, was it like once you get in, it's like $100 a year. Maybe it's. I think that's what my upgrade charge is. But so that's the other thing to think about. All right, so just like we were talking about with computers, at this point you don't own software. And that's the fallacy. Everybody thinks that when they buy a plugin, they own the plugin. Right. No, what you've done is you're renting the plugin. You've just decided what year you're going to live in. Yeah. And are you going to always live in 2010? Then fine, you spend your money one time. And Waves, they've got the yearly update program. But you don't have to do the yearly update program. You only have to do that if you want to move up to the next version. And the great thing about the subscription model is they're quicker about fixing bugs and they're quicker about adding features. So Pro Tools, every couple of months, they'll have a point, a point revision that will put some additional things in that may be useful, but they'll also kill some bugs. So if you got some weird things that are happening with your particular system, I had a graphics problem that was happening when I was still using my Mac Mini, and it directly was the video card and Pro Tools. They didn't like each other, so you'd get these white screens every once in a while.
Weird.
You'd have to click around to get it back. Eventually, right before I upgraded my computer, they fixed it. But I would have had to wait maybe a year before I would have gotten that on the old model. So there is something to be said for that. Being able to, like I say, I just downloaded Pro Tools 2019. Now they're not doing numbers as much. It's the year. So it's 2019.10. And I just downloaded that and put it on a system yesterday. Used it today. And it's great. Now, whatever new features are in there, we'll see. I haven't looked. I just was putting a new one in. I was like, oh, they've got a new version. And I had just gotten to 0.6, I think. So you'll get revisions faster. You get bug fixes faster. You usually get some features faster. And really, you're only renting your software anyway. I kind of did a little math on some of the, like with the Slate plugins. I already had most of the Slate plugins by the time they went into the subscription model. And I did the math on what did I spend on all those plugins and how long could I have gone on the same money. I found out that when I ran out of, if I spent $200 on this one plugin, I might have been able to use it for 2 years. But for almost the same amount of money, I could have gotten all the plugins and had them for just about the same amount of time. Because by the time I got to the end of that 2 years on my $200 for the one plugin, that's not counting the 8 or 9 or 10 plugins that I had. Got to the end of the 2 years, I had to pay to upgrade it anyway. So yeah, like with the Slate plugins, $15 a month, you get everything. Boom, you're done. And what that works out to be, $180 a year or something like that. That's less than I was paying for any one plugin, unless I got it on sale. So there. If you play the game right, the subscription thing works. You can find some good deals. Eventually, what I think is going to happen, I hope is going to happen, is that when enough people are in the flow and enough people get off the cracks, that's the other thing. You want to know why software is so...
Cracks is wax.
Here's the reason why software is so expensive.
Hashtag cracks is wax.
The reason, and I'll say, back in the late 90s, I might have had a crack or two. There might have been a few plugins that weren't legit 20 years ago, but... I also didn't have any money 20 years ago. But that's what makes it expensive.
That is what makes it expensive.
You want to know why it's expensive? There's so many you got. So I'll
But there's also guys like me who I got offered some cracks behind a club one time.
Yeah.
And not knowing, if I didn't have the money that I wanted to do that, to be able to use them 100% was the thing that needed to sink the hook with me to buy them. It obviously doesn't work with enough people. Like for me to be responsible, go, hey, I'm using this. Like there's been a lot of shareware stuff online. Like there's a program called Graphics Converter that I've used a bunch, and it's freeware if you're a Mac user, and it's incredibly powerful if you don't have the money to do Photoshop or any of that kind of stuff. But it's a donation type thing. He's not asking. He's like, hey, if you use this stuff and you like it, shoot me whatever. And you use enough, and you're like, it's good software. There's probably not enough people who would be like, what, here's $25 for that. I've certainly got way more than $25 worth of use out of it, and will continue to.
Well, you think about we'll say Waves in particular, because that's one that. They've done good more recently with running sales and things like that. That was something that I had been saying for a long time. Like, your plugins never go on sale. Like, now they're probably put them on sale too much. Every month something is $29.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the model now. And like, I don't know who started that, but that's where competition kind of breeds that stuff, because there's other companies who do a similar thing. They give out coupons.
Think about, and even today, there's still people, not any of the professionals. We've gone down a tangent. We've gone down a deep tangent here. All right, so the thing about plugins, especially, like, no working professional that I know uses crack software at all.
Yeah.
All the really horrible people, the people that make awful music, the people that make awful anything, most of the people that have crack Photoshop are making really awful graphic stuff. I see their logos and I'm like, ugh.
But it's kind of like they know.
Right.
And that's why they're not going to make a financial commitment to a tool.
Something changes, though. I'll say this. Something changes in your life when you say, you know what? I'm going to spend the money. I'm going to spend the money.
But I think it takes that commitment to, like, I believe in the craft of what I'm doing. Right. I believe I'm making a turn in my learning curve.
Right.
You know, my mixes are getting better, or my photography is getting better, or whatever it is. Then you can be inspired. There's really a couple of different kind of people. There's the kind of person who's just a professional at other things.
Yeah.
Maybe they're a computer programmer, maybe whatever, but they're making their money not in the business. Mm-hmm. That's the guy that goes into Guitar Center and goes into, you know, the gold champagne room and like finds the really great Les Paul vintage guitar and all of that stuff. Most of my working musician friends who can justify having those guitars do not have the funds to justify spending that kind of money. So there's that kind of like consumer that's not a working professional. But then the working professional side of it, of, you know, they have everything, they don't even need it, they don't maybe they know what to do with it, but they're just messing around with it. But and then you have people
there's some excuses. I think people make excuses about that stuff, because here's the thing. I know if I really want something and I really think it's valuable, especially if it's going to help my work, I'll find the money.
Yeah.
Now if funds are a little bit low, maybe I have to wait.
Or maybe you let go of something that you don't need anymore.
I got a tape machine I'm about to sell for that very reason.
You know, there's all kinds of stuff like that.
But you can be smart about it. So, and I'm really pushing people towards buy your software.
Absolutely.
But there are ways, if you're smart about it. My friends in retail stores are going to probably hate me saying this, but like with plugins, there's some great sites. Audio Deluxe is one I use all the time. That you can get the same software. It's all legit. They're all legit licenses. Everything's fine. It's just they don't have a brick and mortar they have to pay for. There are sites like that. I think Plugin Boutique is another one. There's sites on the internet where you can buy your software and there's a little bit of a price break on it. Maybe it knocks $25 off. What I like to do a lot of times is, there's it's called the T-Verb, I think it is. It's Tony Visconti reverb plugin. It models what they did with these David Bowie vocals, where they basically mic'd progressively in the room, right? The moment it came out, I was like, I want it. It was like $200. And at the time, $200 was not something I could cut loose of. And so I did what's the smart thing to do, or what's the better thing to do. I waited. And knowing eventually every plugin goes on sale. So I waited until it was like $89 or something like that. It was one of those, almost like a Black Friday sale. And then you buy it through Audio Deluxe and then knock another $20 off of it. So if you want to buy your software and you want to have everything legit, if you can wait, there are better ways to spend your money. Yes. Talking about better ways to spend your money, I'm going to go back to the computer, because I'll tell you how right now, the new Mac Pros will be coming out soon, I think. There are very few people I know that can afford these new Mac Pros that are coming out. We all talk about how much we want to be able to have a modular system where we can plug things in and do all these different things. We can put these cards in, pull these cards out, do this, do that, do the. Truth is, in 2019, most people don't open up their computers and do things to them. And most things don't require cards. Back when I had Delta 1010 cards, interfaces, you had to put a card in a computer that then the breakout box would, like, you had to plug stuff in. Now it's USB 3, it's Thunderbolt, it's any number of different things. We're not plugging in as much stuff. So here's my, if you have the budget for this and you really want to get, say, 5 more years out of whatever you buy today, and the reason I say this works is I did this. Buying a refurbed Mac, and especially the refurb 2013 model, the trash cans. There are lots of different refurb people online where you can go and buy a refurb. And a lot of times what they're doing is they're taking these off-lease computers, and the one that I bought mine from, they pretty much just kept the boards. They kept the structural stuff. They replaced the video cards. They replaced the hard drive. They replaced the RAM. They put all new stuff in there. And so other than, not having a cover that was new, I think it had one little scratch that was like 2 centimeters long on the back of it. I could see a little scratch anyway. So a computer that, had I bought it brand new that day, would have cost me, spec'd out the way it was, between $9,000 and $10,000. I ended up spending $2,500, I think, and I got the best dual video card that model came with. I got a 2 terabyte internal drive. I got 64 gigs of RAM. But again, I also waited. I picked out the person or the refurb company I was going to buy from. I also knew enough that every quarter they ran like a special 1-day or 2-day sale. So normally this computer would have cost me $3,200 or $3,000. But I waited until the day it was $2,500, and that's the day that I bought it. So I was a little bit patient. I stacked my nickels. I was a little bit patient. And so that the day I bought that refurb, if I had ordered one of those trash can Mac Pros brand new, because they were still selling them, it would have cost me between $9,000 and $10,000 for the spec that I got. If I got the same equivalency in the brand new Mac Pros, because if I just had to have one of these new mythical machines, where I can plug cards in that I will probably never do, use. It was going to be like $18,000. It was going to be ridiculous. So my thing for people now is you can find computers that have been refurbed, that have been slightly used, and if you know which refurb companies to go to, I'm not. Nobody's paying me to say which one. That's why I'm not telling you. If somebody wants to pay for advertising, I'll tell you exactly who I used. But they'd have to pay me to say that, or give me some of my money back. Give me some money back. But I'll say right now the real sleeper in terms of value. For the money that you spend and the longevity you're going to get, those 2013, and then this one that I got from them was actually made in like the end of 2015. So it wasn't a 2013 computer, it was a 2015.
Yeah, that's when they roll it out.
Yeah. That's the year that design came out. But this one, when I ran the numbers on it, they sent me the numbers and I double checked everything, and it was actually made in late 2015. So it wasn't really that old anyway. And so I know that you can do the same thing with some of the iMacs that are out. The only reason I'd steer away from the iMac is the display. But you know what? I took that one apart the other day and put an SSD in it. And if you know how to work on computers, if you saved enough money on a refurbed iMac and the display goes bad in a year and a half, they're really easy to replace. Like it's 2 ribbon cables. It's super easy, and you can buy them. You can buy them OEM all day long, online. So, but the Mac Minis, if you can still find the quad core Mac Minis, that some of them have already got the SSDs already put in them. You know, the 2 SSDs that we talked about, they've already got the RAM maxed out on them, all that stuff. So look at the refurb market. It's not trashed computers. It's not like, you know, going to a flea market and buying a computer. There's some great refurb companies online that you can buy that stuff and save a ton of money, get a lot of stuff. The studio that I just finished doing for this school that I'm working with and doing stuff for, that's exactly what we did. They spent $3,000 because they got a 1-year warranty. So we could have bought it for $2,600, it was $2,600, $2,700 that day, without a warranty from one refurb company. My other choice had the exact same thing. It ended up being like $350 more, but it also had a 1-year warranty. It was with that company. So they guaranteed that machine for at least a year.
That's great.
If it ain't gonna break, and if it doesn't break in a year, it's probably not gonna break. And now if it does, you can replace it if you know how to use the YouTubes. YouTube and iFixit and OWC. I mean, you can get everything that you need to be able to work on almost any Mac nowadays.
Yeah,
so.
it really is an incredible time. Yeah. And I hope for everybody that's watched this, like, this is an important conversation to have loudly, because I think I've been paying pretty good attention to the YouTube culture on most stuff, and a lot of times, and it's rightfully so, there's more videos about the newest, greatest things that's out right now because that's what everybody's hungry for information for. And I'm the same way. Like, I want to see, you know, the new Apple events. I want to hear what their products they're coming out with. I just bought one of those Oculus Quest VR things, and like Mark Zuckerberg just did a very similar kind
VR
of thing.
yet, but I'm
Let me tell you something. When you're ready to like lose some time, it's up, because I'm not allowed to have a gaming console. I learned that in high school with Super Mario Brothers, because I'm a bit obsessive compulsive, and I will stop everything else that I'm doing. I won't practice, I won't learn music, and I'll just sit and try to beat a video game. So I can't have that kind of gratification in my life. But the VR thing has a lot of other implications when you're thinking as an artist about a platform. And I think if you haven't seen any videos, just sidebar from everything we've been talking about, like, it's a Facebook company, so Mark Zuckerberg is behind it, and I think the technology is definitely one of those things to keep an eye on moving forward. Right. Not just for the gaming component, but for the social component, good, bad, or indifferent, it's going to be important.
I will say it has something that's come on my radar in the last couple of months. I hadn't said very much. I can say it on here because it's mostly your people that are watching it and not my people.
And it's the secret cove.
Yeah. Well, I've got a new thing that we're going to roll it out in January, I believe, but there are little glimpses of it. If you pay attention to what I'm doing, you'll see little glimpses of this already. So I'm rolling out an online drum lesson website in January, and I'm hoping maybe at the same time we're going to roll out an online audio engineering website, lesson website at the same time. If not at the same time, it'll be a little bit after. The site's already built. It's the content I'm putting together. But so the thing that's on my radar right now is augmented reality and virtual reality and education. If I'm going to do something different in the education space with digital education, I don't think it's enough to just put a lesson website together, because they're in my space alone. They're not in myspace.com, but in the space of drummers, in the space of drummers who are educators and professional players that have sites. I can think right now of 3 sites, 2 that are really good, and 1 that's not too far behind those other 2. There's 3 that are really good, and there's a dozen I can name off that are doing pretty well and have some longevity. So that's one thing I've started looking at is what could I maybe add as, if I'm looking for white space to get into, how can I use augmented reality and or virtual reality in an educational setting and make it an even more immersive experience? Because there's some things that I've been working on and researching as far as practice, how our brain works, how we assimilate information, how we retain information, and the speed at which we can process this stuff and hold on to it, and then not just regurgitate it, but actually use it to make new things that we couldn't make before we learned them. And trying to see how augmented reality and virtual reality might actually be one of the digital hacks to wrench that up. So yeah,
I will fully agree with that, especially because I teach privately as well. But the last several years, Skype has been an incredible tool as a teaching tool because it allows me to teach people all over the country and all over the world from my house, which is great. Or FaceTime, and like any kind of. The only problem with that is depending on internet connection. And you especially would deal with this too. Like all music happens in time, and just trying to teach somebody the rhythm of a thing. When you're in the same room with a student, you can kind of sync your clocks personally when you're in the same room with somebody. Trying to do that with latency and lag and everything else, like there is something about being just a human being in the same space.
Well, and that's the one thing that we're really getting on another tangent here. That it could be an hour and a half of just this. That's the one shortcoming of not just music lessons, but any kind of, if you're going to learn how to do accounting, if you're going to learn to do anything in the digital space, and believe me, I have courses I'm taking on just about every platform at this point. The one thing that's missing is having an expert in the room with you. And Skype is a good intermediary, but for musicians, it's timing.
Yeah.
But there's also, like where I am with my drumming at this point, the things that I need to learn to be better than I am right now mean I have to get in a room with somebody. I have to, I'm not to name drop, but a couple of years ago, I took a lesson with J.R. Robinson at his house. And I learned more, and we didn't do exercises. My whole reason to get in the room with JR was I need to be 3 feet from you when you do what you do, because I need to try and crack the code on how it is that you make the sound that you make. That's not something you can teach in a lesson.
Yeah.
You can't teach in a digital lesson. You can get closer if you're in the room with somebody, and that's part of what I'm looking at right now. Or what are the intangibles that or where music education falls really short in the digital space, that you'll never be able to truly replace a real teacher or a real expert, because when you're in the room with an expert, there are things that you learn that you could never get any other way. And being in the same room with Steve Jordan for an hour and a half and being 8 feet from him when he plays the groove, and you're looking at it and you're hearing it. There's no microphones, there's no processing. There's just that guy and those sticks and that drum set, and you're taking it in. That has yet to be replicated, and that's kind of what I'm looking at. Like, how can you really wrench up all the things you can do with education? Anyway, that's
kind of the point. But like, we should probably like think about future things we can talk about like that, because another thing that I think is a particular problem with getting people to go to venues and just having the emotional response that you have by going to a concert hall, and what that means. Great records can do that, but when you record a record, you don't know at this particular moment in time. Like if somebody's going to stream it on Spotify, there's questions about the quality of the sound on Spotify. You're also questioning, well, what is the medium that they're listening on? Are they just ear pods? Are they Beats? Those aren't very good.
As someone who has a company now that makes in-ear monitors, that's a big thing to me.
It's a huge thing.
What are they listening to it on?
It's not enough for someone just to hear something one time, because it's almost throwaway online with stuff like that. So it's important, and I think the VR thing is being very forward-thinking in that way. They're doing things now like, and I've only had the thing for several weeks. There was a Post Malone concert that you could buy tickets to, and you could virtually go to the concert hall.
Oh, wow.
And sit and watch.
And look around.
The concert. Yeah, and like you are 360 in the environment. It's I didn't watch the concert because I'm not a Post Malone fan, but as soon as it's offered for somebody that I'm remotely interested in, I know what their music is like.
You're going to latch onto it.
Yeah, I definitely want to see it.
Tool does one, you're going to be like right on it or something like that.
Yeah, because like one of the things a lot of us are doing are home concerts. If you can't get into venues because younger bands are taking up all of those the club dates, and they're willing to do it for next to no money just to get their name out there. Well, I have to pay a bill. I've got a mortgage to pay. I've got things I've got to do for certain. Not that everybody doesn't need to make money, but home concerts are a really good gap for a lot of artists to be able to do a very intimate experience, which is frankly a very cool thing.
Yeah.
But being very forward thinking, and there's a lot of things like this that we talked about with my recording situation where this is not the same as like, should I buy a tube amp or should I buy a fractal?
Right.
Like those are very different tools that if you know what you need is a JCM 800, if you want the 50 watt single channel JCM 800, that is just the sound.
Yeah.
Because you've played one, you should 100% go get one because that one is going to be different from every other JCM 800 50 watt single channel amp. A fractal is going to be that model. And they're going to pick the best one to model, and they're going to capture it to the best of their ability. But everybody that has a fractal has the same JCM 800. So there's not a lot of tactile uniqueness to that kind of thing. It's a tool. It's a Swiss Army knife. It's incredible technology. But it's really a different question of why you would get one over the other. Right. So this is kind of a bridging gap conversation of you have to move forward with technology to keep doing this. But we do, fortunately, live in a time where we can look a little bit around and like, well, what's coming?
Right.
What's here? What just happened? Because that kind of tells you the full trajectory of why is it going in that direction?
Right.
It's because if there was one thing that did all things perfectly right now and it was perfectly serviceable, you know, and was never going to break down on you. It had tons of headroom and like was going to connect to all possible future devices and in all manner of ways. Like,
it cooks and cleans and does other things.
It julienne's fries. It's my pillow. Like there's nothing that is exactly like that, but being able to upgrade an existing computer, like or buy a refurb like I bought with this Mac, or figure where do you need to spend your money to where like, well, maybe you do this and then you upgrade that later because you're going to have to upgrade this at some point or whatever. Like, I just think I don't see enough of this kind of conversation online. Maybe it exists a little bit more in forums like Gear Sluts or ones like that. But for somebody like me, I'm very fortunate that I know guys like you or Eric Frampton, if I have questions that are under his wheelhouse or Sean Grove or lots of different guys that I don't want to go on those forums because like sometimes you just go read forums and somebody doesn't know and they're trying to learn. They ask a question and like not everybody is always genuinely kind and helpful. Sometimes you're just embarrassed to be the guy asking the question because it seems like everybody else knows the answer already.
Or thinks they know the answer.
Right, exactly. Where I find that really if especially with recording or anything in the sound engineering world, like if you're a decent engineer, I promise you and I could probably take GarageBand on our phones.
Oh, yeah.
And your engineering skills being superior to mine, you could produce something. And this is just a challenge. This is just another box to like, and I find, oops, very sorry, internet people, very sorry. But I find that creatively, restrictions are things
definitely.
like if I have all crayons and all medium in front of me, and you can do anything you want. I'll sit there and I'll stare at it and like, I don't know what I want to do. Yeah. But tell me you've got 4 tracks and you can only use these instruments and you can only use monophonic things or whatever. Immediately I start hinging things on it. I'm going to find a way to break out of that box in some way, or at least be as outwardly creative as I possibly can be within those confines and restrictions. I think restrictions and stress and that kind of pressure is a good thing for creativity.
Yeah. There's an exercise I give to my drum students. And I didn't make this up. I got it from a couple of different teachers. Peter Erskine's probably the one that people would know. But so you put this limitation of I have to hit one. I can hit anything I want to hit. All these things I can hit. I can only use my hand, and then it has to be followed by a foot. So whether it's my bass drum or my hi-hat foot, or if you're double bassing, you get. So you have to play one hand stroke to one foot stroke, and then you just keep doing that. Or you could say 2 hand strokes for every 1 foot. You set the parameter. It can be any rhythm, as long as you pick a tempo. You can rest for as long as you want to rest. I could go, And you'd be really surprised how much more creative that will make you when you put that one limitation on. You'll play things you've never played before. Instead of, well, I've got at least 40 rudiments I know how to play. I can play, at least subdivisions from quarter notes all the way up to 30-second notes, including 5s, 7s, and 9s. I could play all of those things inside of each quarter note. Like, all of a sudden, it becomes too much.
Yeah.
It becomes too much.
Yeah.
Put the limitation. And that's a good thing to say with I think that when you start asking yourself exactly what is it that I am going to be doing, then that's a great place to start in assembling your kit, the things that you're going to use, instead of, well, I want to get the best computer and the interface that does the most stuff and the software that'll do everything in the world, and I want all the plugins because I want to be able to have all the flavors of SSL and all the flavors of API.
Right.
And no, you just
really,
keep it reined in. Keep it reined in.
And the investment really is for me.
Right.
The one thing above all things that I want to upgrade is my skill set.
Yeah.
I want to be a better engineer. I want to be a better composer. I want to be a better producer. I want to be a better mixer.
The technical part of again, there's so many conversations we can get into. So with engineering, there's two components to engineering. There's the technical side of it, and there's the art side of it. And the best engineers are the people that have a healthy balance of both. If you've got high art but very low craft, then you might make something very original, but you also might make a steaming turd, and a lot of them.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you may know everything. There's a guy that's an assistant to me on different projects that I work on who has a PhD in audio. In terms of knowing the guy knows it. He weighs heavy on the technical, very low on the art, which is, that would be conceited for me to say that. I was going to say that's why he's my assistant, but that makes me sound like a
but I mean,
dick,
that's important too.
But yeah, it's a healthy balance. So, so for the creative side, go live life. And it goes back to what I was telling you about having a day job. Like, get out and be around people. I'm saying this to remind myself. Get out and be around people. Get out and experience life. Do all kinds of things. Look at things that aren't music. Look at things that are photography and video and paintings and
food. Food is
my
art,
God.
and you have to eat anyway. So get interested in.
And
not just Cherry Garcia, which I can't really say that because they're not paying me to say that. But if they wanted to pay me by giving me free ice cream, I would accept.
So the part of the art is part of getting that healthy dose of the art side of this is trial and error, but that's predicated on skill. So I'll throw this one out there. If you're still sitting here almost 2 hours later listening to us, if you need, and I'm giving this one to you, is if you want to learn more technical stuff, groove3.com, groove3.com. Right now, if you go, I love this product so much. They're not paying me to say this, but I think everybody should do it. I think they're running a special now for like $89 or $90. Normally, it's like $150 for a year subscription, all you can eat. You can buy the individual courses that are anywhere from $10 to $30, or you could pay the all access. So that's the site that I use. I don't use YouTube. Unless there's maybe something real specific and I know I subscribe to somebody that answer might be there. YouTube's full of a lot of crap that is probably wrong. Unless it's me talking about it or you talking about it or someone that's a qualified professional, it's probably crap. But groove3.com has got pretty much video courses on every single piece of software available. And now within the last couple of years, they've started to assimilate classes on audio engineering and composition and mixing. I mean, it's all over the map now. It's not just how do I use this one piece of software. They've got, if you wanted to learn beginner banjo, they probably have a video on there now about it. If you needed to know how to mic a vocal, there's any one of 2 or 3 different professional engineers that probably have some videos there that you can see how to do that. For me, for instance, when I bought Native Instruments Machine, it took me 8 hours to learn how to use it because that's exactly how long the video course was. Now, that was the technical part of it. The art part of it, I'm still trying to figure out a year later.
What to do with it. Yeah.
But I can go to that. I can go to Machine and I can start to work. I know where things are. I know how to operate this thing. Now I can get into the art part. I can reach deep inside and see what's there that I can use this tool. And Groove 3 got me there in 8 hours. So, groove3.com. I'm giving that to you, giving that people that are still sitting here.
You take that home with you. Or if you're watching this at home.
I mean, if you want to pay me, my private lesson fee and have me teach you something, then great. That's fabulous. But if it's one of those things where you need the information when you need it, or you need it in bite-sized chunks versus 8 hours at one time, you want to be able to go back and look at stuff that you learned at one time and had forgotten it. Groove 3 is great for that. So that handles the technical side of it. The art side, I'm still.
That's what we're all working on. Yeah, that goes on forever. So anyway,
So is there anything else? Any questions I can answer out of what you wanted to talk about?
I think that was most everything for me. Like the only last dangling thing was just that I noticed.
Yep.
When I went to download Mojave, since Catalina has come out, that link was broken online.
You can find it.
Yeah, so that's another thing. We could talk about that off.
And actually, there's a couple of. I'll send you some links. There's a couple of different folks that have basically an app that it's a payload that you download. It's a disk image you download that what it'll do is it'll actually format the drive for you and do everything you need to do. So yeah, there's places you can get it on the net. If you know how to get it off the Apple website, you can. But they make it really hard to do.
Yeah, they want to push everybody to the new thing. Because they don't want to service the old thing anymore. But that makes sense.
I guarantee you, if you upgrade to Catalina right now, everything that you have will break in audio.
That's not even an option. And those
Final
are
Cut Pro will work, but nothing else works.
That's why reading things, doing a little bit of investigation and before you jump into something, knowing that right off the bat that things. I've been doing audio for long enough in the digital realm to know that just because this new operating system has come out does not mean that everybody else has tested it and can certify that it's good to go.
Yeah.
So you wait. You have to do that. Let other people do the early adopting and the beta and all of that stuff. That is not my particular place in this world.
But you also don't have to stay 5 years behind. Or more. I will say. So Mojave, I've only gone to Mojave within the past maybe 4 months. That's how long I waited for Mojave. But by the time I got there, and the only reason that I really went there was there was some stuff because I use Final Cut Pro. I use Final Cut Pro and Premiere Pro for video editing stuff. Well, there were some features in Final Cut Pro that I had to get up to Mojave to be able to get to that version. And so, I took the one computer that if stuff was going to break on it that was audio, I could still live. That one that's mostly the Photoshop and sometimes Final Cut computer. And I upgraded that, and it was fine. Everything was great. And then I sort of dipped my toe in the other computers that I've got around here. But usually I usually stay one big version behind. So I'll stay on Mojave almost up until the point when they're done with Catalina and move into the next thing.
Summer.
Yeah. But the great thing about it is most all of these pieces of software will run on Mojave. The only reason I say Mojave is kind of the High Sierra was, there's some things about video cards with operating systems. It started with High Sierra. There were some firmware upgrades that you would have to do. But now with some of the things they're doing with video codecs, not every computer can get up to Mojave, because not all of them will run Metal. I think that's what it's called. Anyway, there's some stuff with video cards that will kind of keep you from being able to get to that one. So
I think
you're good.
For my
you're good
world,
on that one. You
mid to late 2012 is the bottom.
Yeah.
These would be the next ones to drop off when they're not going to work anymore.
Right. But that's one, again, that's one of those things that, I mean, I just kept my ear to the ground on that stuff. There are places that I go that I get my news and get my that's not some of these, like I never read Gear Sluts ever, but I don't have to because I've got better places to get that information. There are Mac sites that are also have some things to do with audio and video that I go to that let me know, hey, here's the thing you're going to have to do. You're going to have to replace this if you're going to this. So that's just one thing to kind of get to the end of with this when you're picking computers and why Mojave is the thing that I ask people when they're wanting to know if they need to get a new computer. I'm like, find out if you can go to Mojave. If you can, you'll be fine, because everything that's available now in terms of software will run for at least the next 2 or 3 years on that. So that's kind of that's sort of the break point.
And if I haven't finished this record in the next 2 years, we're probably going to need to have another kind of conversation.
Much different conversation. Much different conversation. I will tell you,
my beard can't get much longer, man. Because literally, when I stopped working on the record, I started growing the beard. Kind of like I need to birth this thing. So I'm going to be the papa whenever it's ready to be here.
You know, if that guy from the Oak Ridge Boys ever got sick, if you can sing, you could sub for that guy. And nobody would know the difference.
I could just stand there.
Well, that's true.
If I just let my mustache grow a little bit longer,
and they could run the Ableton track, and you'd be good.
Yeah, like they would never know. Because the mustache would just cover the whole thing.
One thing that we didn't talk about that we should probably just mention is, because I said the word Ableton. For you, yeah, definitely get to Pro Tools, the newest version of Pro Tools. For most people that are out there, you may not need Pro Tools. If you're on Mac, Logic may do everything that you need it to do.
Yeah, and the reason that I'm with Pro Tools is when I first got into recording as an artist, right, not just trying to learn how to record, but going into studios and being recorded for albums. That was the thing after ADAT that I was in studios doing ADATs, and then everybody was Pro Tools.
Yeah, it's so just all ubiquitous.
All of my expert advice was Pro Tools at first. Right. So you just adopt the thing that you can get the best information on. And I know plenty of people who use Logic. I will probably put Logic Pro X on this machine at some point too, because I feel like I should know it. I hear really good things about Reaper.
Yeah, it's good. I've got that. I don't use it much. Up until I stopped updating my Nuendo at like 7, but that's when I moved into Pro Tools HD. But at the same time, what I also did, I noticed all the features that I was using were all in Cubase. Now it's Cubase Pro. So basically, I waited till a sale and I bought the Cubase Pro version 6 or 7 or whatever it was. And I've basically been making those upgrades. And for what I use that's for me, if I use a particular platform, it's because it does something better than the platform I'm used to.
Yeah.
Pro Tools is just so ubiquitous. There's so many places that I walk into that's what they use. There's so many people that I collaborate on stuff with. I've got every platform here. I mean, every platform that's commercially available at this point. But that's just so that if somebody is sandboxed and they're working there's a singer out in LA I do stuff for, that the track producer she's working with, those guys only work in Ableton. Or if she sends me something to mix, instead of expecting them to get it out of Ableton, I just have them send me the Ableton sessions. I open everything up. I get it out. I print the things that I think, you know what, I like that. We're going to keep that. I get everything out of there. And I use Ableton on gigs for things too. But the only reason I'd say for you with Pro Tools is being able to collaborate with people and be able to send files back and forth and all that kind of stuff.
Well, that and everything.
For most people, it's whatever the right pair of pliers is to get the job done.
Yeah, for me, it works out great. I know a lot of keyboardists and MIDI guys like Digital Performer because for the longest time, they were the MIDI game.
I hate Digital Performer.
And because I'm not a MIDI guy,
I just
look
opened it
at
today,
it like,
as a matter of fact.
It doesn't interest me, but I work with guys like David Mannion or Eric Frampton. Like MIDI has I think even before this version of Pro Tools that I have, Pro Tools had upped their MIDI game substantially to where you can work. Like,
you can do stuff. You can
Digital
do plenty.
Performer is much more powerful if you're a MIDI studio,
certain kind of thing.
Of course. For me, because I do so much audio, just audio. Like I'm not even doing a lot of VST stuff. So if you do a lot of VST stuff, I can see why Logic is very appealing because it's kind of designed to do that kind of thing. Yeah. I feel like I need to learn it.
And if you know the history,
if you
know the history of Logic, where it came from, all the way back in like the eMagic days and stuff, like it came from MIDI. Same with Cubase. I mean, that's one of the reasons why Cubase and Nuendo. That's why Hans Zimmer uses it, because it came from a MIDI start and gradually became an audio and MIDI program. But yeah, it started as a MIDI program, whereas Pro Tools started as an audio. Destructive audio way long before it was Pro Tools. Just Digital Performer. That's the one platform that even though I have it, like I had to open a bunch of stuff in Digital Performer today to get it out of there to put it into Pro Tools, and it's awful. I hate it. So I'll just no plug for Digital Performer at all.
Thumbs down.
Thumbs down.
So anyway, thank you everybody who jumped on this. If you have if you're watching this either during the stream or after the stream, leave a comment and I will follow up on any of that stuff. Also, because I made a little mistake on which live stream thing I had set up to start this, I will correct that, and there will be a link to Brian's YouTube channel.
Yes. I'm just starting to make content for after I've had it for 10 years.
Same here. So like follow, subscribe, do all of that stuff, plus all the socials, everything is all over the place there. Brian.
SecretCoveStudios.com. Make sure you I wore this hat specifically because I wanted to be able to say SessionAce.com. That's my little labor of love side hustle project. The absolute best in-ear monitors, bar none. I've put my 6-driver $350 in-ear monitors up against $1,800 custom molded ones, and I don't say it because it's my company. I designed this stuff and put it out and all that stuff. I did the same taste test with friends and people that weren't friends, but they let me have their time, and the general consensus was, they're way better. So, So SessionAce.com if you need in-ear monitors. There's a bunch of other stuff there, too, that are all very music related. And these cool hats. SessionAce.com. Make sure you go. And here's the logo for it. I can actually do that.
Hey, wow, look at that.
I thought... that's the dual driver, dude, man. And this is just whatever was loaded. I bet if I go in, I've got more stuff sitting on here. So so those are the dual driver in-ear monitors that are $150, I think. Sounds better than anything under $1,000. I can tell you that because I know exactly what's in everything under $1,000. I have learned that, and I made sure that I spent a lot more money. Of course, I have a lot less margin. I make about $20 on every single pair that gets sold. But it's the dual drivers are the ones I made for me. Like when I got tired of everybody's crappy in-ear monitors that cost $600 and $700 and $800 a piece, that sounded awful. I designed those, and then now we've got some 6 drivers that are $350 that are amazing.
Well, and I know we talked about this a little while ago, but that's I've been a little focused on recording stuff.
Sure.
But now I'm in this corporate band because I'm on in-ears.
Yep.
I just got myself something that was better than whatever.
Yeah.
Won't even bother mentioning what they are. You know what they are. But we
I
should talk
probably
about
own them.
Because, probably.
Just like every plug-in, I have at least one of every commercially available in-ear monitor. So I know.
So, it's about time because,
Dude, I got something.
I will tell you something.
If you're not
used to being on in-ears, and you're now doing in-ears all the time, it's uncomfortable.
It can be.
For me, it's been a little uncomfortable. Like I found some silicon things because I don't have proper molds
Right.
anyway that are comfortable and like they don't move in my ear when I turn my head.
Right.
That's huge. You know,
Yeah.
just having the shift in sound is so distracting for me. Like those little silicon things work pretty well, but you know, I'm just dealing with like I just got single drivers just to get me through and
Right.
working.
Oh man, I'll change your life.
Yeah, that's not good enough for me. I don't think I need 8 drivers, but I definitely need something because I like to run the volume quieter.
Well, and that's the great thing. One of the reasons why so many people run their ears so loud is because most of them are not really full range. They don't reproduce the entire spectrum accurately.
Yeah, I can't hardly put any bass drum,
right.
any bass guitar, bass synth,
'Cause they
any
fart
of that
out.
stuff.
Yeah.
I have to
Dude,
get it out of there.
Dude,
and
I'm
just
gonna
let the
change your
room
life.
rumble.
Change your life. No. So that's a lot of it. Is you're not really getting what you need, and so people turn it up. I specifically wanted something that was full range that would reproduce everything. Didn't have little tricks in the low mid to make you think it had a lot of low end.
Yeah.
And or little tricks in the high mid to make you think it was open on top. We're right now we've got the 2 different models, the 2 driver, the dual driver, and the 6 driver. We're next year probably going to do some custom molds. The only reason that I'm even doing custom molds is because enough people have asked for them. And I think there's something that we can do that's a little better than what's being offered right now. But I'm also not going to have to lay out $100,000 to do a line. So, unlike the other ones I've had to do. So we're going to do some custom molds next year just because there's some people that want to spend $800 on a set of ear monitors. And I'd like to give them something that is as good as if you spent $2,500, but you'll only spend $800. We'll see.
I think that sounds great.
Yeah. Anyway, sessionace.com. Make sure you go check that out.
So very special thanks to my good friend Brian Stevens for not only participating in this conversation and dropping a whole lot of wisdom and listening to my particular needs so that I can make up my mind and get moving on my next thing so I can get moving on this record, but also just letting me plug into his system and do all of this stuff because, I mean...
Welcome.
Thank you. Like this is incredible. This is great and like so much better than anything I will do on my channel until if I'm doing all these studio upgrades. This is on the docket, but it's going to take me a minute because I have one light.
Well, and again, just like everything else, I will point you in the direction of the right things you need to buy so you don't have to buy something.
Also, I'm going to write some things down on my way out the door for sure. So,
dude.
Man, thank you so much.
Thanks, man.
Everybody,
thank y'all.
Thank you guys online. Adam for being here. Hey, John, good to see you, man. And I will see you guys very soon.
Cool. Later.
Cheers. Thank you.